The first time I saw a UFO, I was in my car with my father. We were driving back one night, and out in front of our headlights came down a perfect triangle, and it stayed equidistant from the front of our car, even as I drove along for several miles. I didn't say anything. My father didn't say anything. It then, as we started on a curve, shifted a little bit, but stayed out there, and then suddenly whooshed past us, almost through us. Finally, I think I was about 18 years old at this time. Finally, I broke the silence and I said, "Did you see that?" And my father said, "Yes." I said, "What was that?" He said, "I don't know." That's all we ever said about it. The second time, I wasn't alone in seeing it then either. In fact, there were at least scores of us, maybe hundreds of us. You see, I was at a Christian college that I was attending, and we were watching a tennis match. It was at night, under the lights, but I wasn't in under the light area. I was away from the bleachers, standing at a higher place of ground that was flat, where there were quite a few of us. And quite a few of us noticed a perfectly round red dot in the air. And red dots in the air are not that unusual, but usually they're a little bit fuzzy. They're the left side lights or the port side lights of airplanes. But this was perfectly round. It was just remarkable. Now, none of us had binoculars. None of us had smartphones because phones weren't smart back in the early and mid 70s when this took place. And we watched this light move, and then it would move over here, and then it would move over here. Now today, you would say, that's a drone. We didn't know what a drone was. We had no concept of those. This was very unusual. Now, we weren't afraid of it, but we were very curious. None of us panicked. None of us ran to get a camera because almost none of us had a camera. We were students. And the little Instamatics that they had at the time, kids, ask your grandparents, wouldn't have captured anything. And so we were just locked in. And then suddenly it shot across the sky and was gone. No explanation. Didn't make the papers. Well, one of the popular movies when I started dating Miss Cammie was Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And in it, for example, there is a line when somebody says, well, nobody's gotten a good, clear video image of a UFO. Let's just call them that for now. We don't call them that anymore, but we'll talk about that. A UFO coming and landing. Nobody's got a video of this or a good picture of it. And the answer that comes back is, well, we have plane crashes, we have car crashes every day, we have train crashes, and nobody's ever gotten a video or picture of them. Oh, but now they have. Everybody is walking around as an amateur filmographer, and they're able just to video whatever they want to. So we have all kinds of pictures now. So what did I see? Either time. What are they seeing? And why are we now calling UFOs UAPs, for unidentified aerial phenomena? I think that the change of name, which really is enforced in government circles, has not really caught on in the popular imagination yet, but it will over time. I think the name change was mainly to get rid of all of the stigma attached to the phrase or the initials UFO. Because, let's just be honest, for many years there have been hoaxsters, skeptics, and self-proclaimed ufologists, that's a real word, that go about holding seminars, making testimonies of abductions and government conspiracies. And every so often, like just about a year or so ago, you'll get even somebody at a Senate hearing testifying that they saw alien remains and they saw this, and they used to work for the government. They used to work for NASA, or they used to work for the CIA or the like. Therefore, people began to panic and they go, what are they not telling us? Well, there are several problems, a lot of problems. For example, the Roswell incident has been debunked so many times. And yet Roswell, New Mexico still lives off of it, eats lunch off of it every day with all of the different kitschy shops and restaurants and signs. And there are still people who claim, well, my dad knew a fella and he was there and this is what really happened. We have this need for drama, and that feeds these conspiracy theories. But every single one of them is debunkable. What did I see? Here's the thing about Patrick. I'm really, really smart in a few areas. That doesn't mean I'm smart in the other areas. And that's a charge that can be leveled against me, and I would nod my head, yes. For example, I have a team that works making our videos on Sunday look better and sound better. Acoustics is a science, a deeply complex science, and I don't know it at all. It's for me to talk about acoustics would be to talk from a wellspring of ignorance. So when I talk about some of these things, just be aware I'm telling you what the latest science has told me, but I'm not an expert. All right? That said, refraction of light and reflection of light, two different things, but they can have the same effect. They can cause you to see lights in the sky that move in not physics type ways. And in fact, one of these recently hit me when I saw a light that kept following me and appearing me over my left shoulder. But now I'm older. Now I have science degrees. And so I was able to figure out that's the sunlight hitting my watch, and it's now reflecting off the side window of my car. And when I move the wheel, it looks like it's coming up on me, and then it will pull back. I'm able to see that. And I'm able to understand that the triangle went away when we hit a curve and went through us, because the light reflection that we were experiencing only works if you're going straight at night. And in the daylight, we would see nothing. And when we hit a curve, we were no longer in the same position of light, windscreen, eyeballs, and so it goes away. The red dot, easy again. Something on the ground is reflecting up in the air. It is reflecting in a way that makes it look far and look fast when it is not. It's hitting a cloud, and that is now fooling all of us. We can look at this and we can do the math on all of these. Abductions, all of the abduction stories have horrible inconsistencies. Every single one of them. The most famous ones are the worst. It's rather like the Amityville Horror. You will hear constantly stories about this has been proven, the Amityville Horror. The story the people told about them and their house has been debunked at every single stage. Complete frauds, didn't happen. And yet even this October, there will be new movies and books out. And these people lived off on this, going around and doing seminars for the gullible and easily led. Now, sure, you can go to that great university called the University of the Internet and Google searches, but that does not equate to a science degree, and it does not equate to a detective's badge. And detectives have actually looked into all of this too. So what is going on? The universe is unmeasurably strange. It is vastly complex. And if you ever thought you had a handle on it, then you can just start looking at quantum physics and realize you don't. Richard Feynman famously said anybody who claims they understand quantum physics de facto does not. They prove that they do not by claiming that they do. It is just a weird universe. But one of the realities of the universe is the speed of light. Trying to travel from one galaxy to another is just, the physics of it are mind-blowing. If you'd ever like to follow somebody who will give little talks on this, there is a British astrophysicist named Brian Cox, C-O-X. There are many Brian Coxes in the world, so just make sure you're following the right one. Go to YouTube and just do astrophysics, time travel, something like that, then Brian Cox. And it's with an I, not a Y. So when you do that, listen to little clips and see the vast difficulties of distance in our universe. For an example, for the nearest planet that could possibly sustain intelligent life, for them to then develop a space program that allows them to go almost the speed of light, 99.99999% the speed of light, and come to us, would still take so many light years that, and by the time they got to us, because of time compression and elasticity, they would have had to leave for Earth before we started building cities. We were still sitting around campfires and worried about getting eaten on the savannas. Why would they make that effort to come see us? In fact, if you go by evolutionary timescale, and I know many of my viewers do not, but if you go by evolutionary timescale, they would have had to leave for us when we were still basically fish trying to become mammals. Why would they do that? So there's no reason for them to come here, and the distance won't let them come here. Don't write in and talk to me about wormholes. I know what wormholes are, and they are entirely theoretical. I certainly hope we find a loophole in the laws of physics that allow a wormhole to exist, but right now there is absolutely no possible way. And no Star Trek-y type thing of putting on the boosters and a little bit harder and then just zipping through the stars is going to work for us, because it doesn't work that way. So what are people seeing? Many of them are faking. Let's just be blunt. It's just a fake. That's a huge subject. Let's set that aside. Others are confused. We find most of these sightings take place at night when there has been alcohol and on a lonely road, a little scared, a little disoriented. People will say, well, what about on this one? The motor stopped. And then after the exchange, it started again. Once again, go back and listen, or if it's before recordings, go back and read the transcripts of every person's testimony, how they told the story, and you will find it is never consistent. It keeps changing. So no, none of these would be allowed in court. No grand jury would not put issue a bill on any of these. But they might be sincere, but they're not right. Another thing is this: if the government really had alien technology, the governments are corrupt. They would immediately give it to their buddies in corporations in return for massive cash. They would absolutely do that. They would call their buddies at this, I'm not going to name any corporations, even theoretically, because I don't need to be sued. But they could, this computer place, this metallurgic place, this whatever, and say, I've got this, you can backwards engineer it, you're going to be light years, there you go, ahead of your competition. They would immediately sell it out. What about the guys that testified? There's no nice way to say what I'm about to say. So let me do it as gently as I can. You can find preachers that will say anything. It doesn't have to be true. It doesn't have to be scriptural. It doesn't have to have anything to do with God. And they'll claim it. They've been doing it all month by claiming that you won't see this video because the Feast of Trumpets is the rapture is coming. We did a thing on a rapture a couple weeks ago. You can go back and look at that. But you can find them to say anything. You can find doctors who will say cancer isn't caused by cell division of light. No, it's caused by this virus. Some might be, by the way. Others, it's only caused by your diet. Others, it's only caused by... You can get a doctor to say anything, or some doctors to say anything. And you can get CIA guys who may honestly believe what they're saying, but they're kooks. And doctors can be kooks, and ministers can be kooks, teachers can be kooks. We've seen it. Have we not seen this? So if you get one out of American intelligence agencies run into the over 100,000 employees, do you think we're not going to find a kook in there? The same with NASA. And the problem, again, with places like NASA, for example, is that an absolute expert, the most brilliant person in the world in propulsion systems, doesn't mean they know anything about the difficulty of space travel. That's a different thing. They don't know astrophysics. The distances are too big for other people to come see us. And unless and until we find another layer of physics available, we're not going to go to them. And there's no reason for them to come to us, because once again, they would have had to leave before we were interesting. Are there things in this? Are there unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean they're extraterrestrial. It means they're unidentified. I'll leave you with the last one here. A couple of years ago, there was a series of lights in Arizona that people took videos of and posted on the internet and said, finally proof. And the Daily Mail in Britain, they have an American edition online, but the Daily Mail is always first with the most strange, unbackupable things. You know, we found the chariots of the Egyptians in the Red Sea. They do that kind of stuff. They flash, you know, finally proof. Turned out to be, you just had to get some people that understood light and how light works and reflections and refractions. And they showed exactly how these were reflections from landing planes at airports a long way away. That didn't make the headlines. Are there other planets that have lives and cultures? I don't know, but I would be shocked if there isn't. There are more than trillions of stars out there, and many of them have planets that could support life, and they might very well support life. And then the next question people ask is, what about God? And you know, Jesus died to save us. We don't know what God's plans are for everything in the universe. Can we agree on that? Now, can we agree on this next one? God is big enough to handle whatever he's creating, because it's still creating, by the way. There are star factories out there everywhere. Look up the Horsehead Nebula, one of my favorites. Is God's big enough to handle all of that? Can we agree on that? So God's got a plan, and God's got things at work there. I even had one person ask me, if ever you met an alien, would you tell them about Jesus? I said, nope. And he looked at me and he goes, why not? And I said, first of all, for practical reasons, I'd be either running, shooting, or fainting. But theological reasons, Jesus came and told me to go into all the world. Wherever that kid's from, that's not my diocese. Maybe we should just worry about where God told us to work and live, but still wonder about the heavens. And by the way, if they ever decided they needed somebody to hop in a craft going 99.999% the speed of light so that we could cross the galaxy and go look at something, I'd go. I'd love to see it. I hope maybe that when I die, God will give me a flyby of the universe, but you know, he's already given me far more than I could have ever asked for, so I'll just lay that in the wish pile. Have a fantastic week, and I guess live long and prosper. I don't know. Enjoy living on this planet, because it's a pretty cool